I'm going to call this my lucky video. Just people a lot more famous than me being round me. This is my friend Richard Paterson. He has sent me these songs and I'm adding them to my videos. Obviously I don't know if he actually made them for me, but he's allowed me to use his music, and I will. The second song he sent me is playing today on this video, perfect. But originally he was in a band called the Revolutionary Dub Warriors, and there he is on the keyboards. And I've made a few videos before in the past about my friend Steve. He was the singer and he died about, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago now. But there's Richard on the keyboards when they were in their band, and there's my friend Steve there singing away. So I just wanted to show you that, you know, he had played in a band, and yeah, they had a record label, and I was just over the moon when this band brought the master copy round to my house so I could hear it. I was so happy. But anyway, years later, but that's Richard when he was in that band there, the keyboard player. And the music playing on this video he has given me so I can put on my videos, which is very sweet of him. This is well, I'm just lucky on this video when you think about it, when you hear the rest of the video. Anyway, let's continue with the video. That's my friend who made this music. Hello everybody. I suppose this is part 4, because we're not, well, when I'm making this, James's version of the Egyptians hasn't come out, so this will be number 4. So what I did was I sent my video of the Pharaoh seem to be Indians to Brian Forrester, and I get a nice little thumbs up there. Now I don't know him that well, but in the past I've had a few good hangouts with him, and I never ever remember him saying that the Egyptians were Indians, or even, because he likes looking at the South American elongated headed people, he never actually said that they were Indians, and so this is why I sent it to him, but it makes all sense now. So we'll put the video on, the little video I made. So yeah, thumbs up from Brian very much. Yes, look at that. Now when I did this to start, I never realised it was all linked to him. Now he has said that they are subhuman. That doesn't mean they're lower than us or anything, but subhuman in the fact that they're not like us. They have completely different brains. They have more chakras and everything. But I mean, if you take the hair away and just look at the face of that Indian, they look kind of Eskimo-like, or even Chinesey-like. I was quite shocked there, but look. Elongated heads of the native people on the South American West Coast. So we'll just open this up because I'll read. Well, am I going to open it up? Oh, there you go, it is opened up. So they're saying it is cranial deformation. And these ones are in Peru. But, we haven't got to it yet, have we? Yeah, there you go. Columbia River, Washington or Oregon. So these Indians have elongated heads. Now, of course, the bit of information I found says that they did this, they bound the heads. But he's saying that they're very different. There you go, Columbia River of Washington or Oregon on the west coast of the United States. I knew it. I knew that if the Egyptians had elongated heads, the pharaohs, then they would have to be in the Indians. But it's not actually that easy to find. Not in North Indians. They'll say that the South American people have elongated heads, the Incas and stuff, but not really the Northern America, more, you know, it just doesn't say. But anyway, so I'm just making this little video with the information that I found. And there are actually not really, well, there was the picture at the beginning there, but there aren't really many pictures. There's drawings of them with elongated heads. 1861 there, 1851. So obviously you can stop and look at this information. I hadn't realised it's all going to go into Brian Forrester. Well, he reckons there are different species of people. There you go. Now it all starts linking into Brian Forrester. But I didn't realise it. I'd never heard him actually say that the North American Indians had elongated heads, or that they were Indians anyway. Because obviously I've been looking it up, haven't I, and realising what I'm seeing. And obviously that was he was going to do that, I think it's 2019 or something like that. Planned, I suppose. Because weren't we all locked down or something? I can't remember now when that was. But anyway, they're the Chinookan people. And they can't be the only ones. It can't just be one set of Indians. There has to be more information. I mean, which one is it? Are they a different human being? Or were they binding all the babies' heads and then generations of elongated headed people? What's your thoughts? And then I remembered all this stuff with Marie Wheatley, and a little bit later on in this video I'm going to add the day we went to this big long barrow. But we were walking on top of this long barrow and it was extremely long. Now I've been to the other long barrow, Kennet and Avon, and it isn't as long as this one. But what it is, isn't it? See, in our mind, we get this feeling, or we're told what Vikings are. But you know, when I look things up, just look up feathers, I'm telling you, they were Indians. Not only is it those pharaohs were Indians, some of them, or all of them. You've got North American Indians, these ones, elongated heads. So we've got Eskimos, they must have some in there. See, these are Viking. And you see the feathers. They were Indians. They were Indians, the same. So they must have elongated heads. You've got the Incas, they've got elongated heads. They registered that one. You've got Eskimo. Come on! We were covered in Indians, and most of them had a lot of them had elongated heads for some reason. You know, in here it's going to tell you it's a fashion statement, but Marie Wheatley and Brian Forrester tell you that these are different people with different brains. So this is a long barrow right next to Silbury Hill. It's just across the road from Silbury Hill. I suppose when you see the front of it and the stones, maybe it looks a bit more Indian-like, doesn't it? Or Viking, as the Vikings had feathers and were Indians. So maybe these are the Viking burial chambers, because they were elongated-headed people. So they built things in long barrows, and the rounder-headed people built things round. So Marie Wheatley says. And here's another one. This one is at the Canning. Another long barrow, so another lot of elongated-headed people. There seems to be rather a lot in the UK. But when you do a little bit of a further search, you can find a little bit more on those Indians having elongated heads. There's not really many pictures, you know, like photographs exactly. But there is always these drawings with these elongated heads. maybe if I'm going too fast on the video, you want to stop the video and look at it yourself. You know, just stop it and read it. But I think that's the end of that one because it goes on to that. But it was that bit I was looking at. So it was more of a beauty, dainty extremities, but of course it was probably very painful having your head bound. So these are a few more bits talking about the elongated heads. So it's not just people in Africa that do it. So were the Vikings elongated? It just seems that it's Indians and they have these elongated heads. Maybe you've actually seen pictures before but not thought about what you were looking at. Anyway, it's been very interesting because obviously the talks are with me on my channel. There you go, look at that one. And so what's your thoughts now I have shown you all this? Some people might have said that I was lucky to actually have these hangouts. They happened probably 2 to 3 years ago. I was lucky to have a couple of hangouts. I'm sure there's more, but anyway, a few hangouts with Brian Forrester. I'm sure there's I'm sure we've done it more than twice. Anyway, these ones I found, and he is talking about elongated headed people in this video, as well as Marie Wheatley is doing it. And then later on in the video, I will add the biggest long barrow, well, a part of that video to show you that we were walking on top of this long barrow. But anyway, let's continue. And, you know, very much appreciate that I had this time talking. You can hear that Brian doesn't like it the way it is. He feels the most important thing is just to get the photography, get the pictures, get the films, and he tries not to put too much of his own perspective on it because he wants people to see the truth. That's what he told me in these hangouts. I've just taken bits of the hangouts where Marie Wheatley and Brian are talking about elongated headed people. Well, roughly those bits. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to put this one and a bit of these two where, you know, I'm just going to put her first and then him second. That's what I'm going to do.
Hey, we're here today with the lovely Maria Wheatley, the lovely Amy, and the lovely Brian Forrester. Hello guys.
Hi Karen, thanks for having me.
So, we've come together today. We're going to talk to Brian Forrester a little bit. But with me and Maria, we went to a long barrow a few weeks ago, didn't we, Maria?
That's right, we went to the largest long barrow in Northwest Europe where we investigated on military land. On the Salisbury Plain, I took you to there, and with my research it showed that there was a long-skulled woman that was originally interned into the long barrow, but certain changes had taken place since I had last visited. When I last visited, as long as there wasn't a red flag flying, which means you can't enter the area because it's military activity being conducted on the Salisbury Plain, you could access the long barrow, but when I took Karen there, it is now a no-go zone.
Yeah.
Whether it's a red flag flying or not, it said no entry.
And we're on the way to, where are we going, Maria?
We're going to the largest long barrow in northwest Europe. It's on military land, so hopefully we're going to have access today. Because if there's a red flag flying on the military Salisbury plain, then we have no go. And it's absolutely huge. So if you imagine a really long earthwork, around about 390 feet long, that originally had a chamber area on the inside. And what I discovered in the actual long barrow was an elongated skulled woman. She must have been prestigious, a queen or a high priestess, because normally in a long barrow it's a communal burial where you would have, for example, 40 people, 50 people, sometimes 100 people buried their deposits. This was just for her, and it's repressed history. Because it wasn't
blocked really from the public, and you found it, didn't you?
Absolutely, I unearthed it, found out that she had an elongated skull. This is holy history, a history that has been denied us through the powers that be, but this is what we're uncovering today. We're going to go to her long barrow, and originally when I discovered the elongated skull people of Stonehenge and elsewhere, around about 4 or 5 years ago now, you could have free access to the long barrow as long as the red flag isn't flying like I described earlier. But just recently the access to the long barrow has been denied by the military. They've put up a sign saying no entry, slip hazard, and that is a nonsense because there's a huge tourist long barrow near Avebury called the West Kennet Long Barrow. It's much smaller than the one we're going to, but numerous tourists stand on West Kennet Long Barrow.
And it's destroying it as well, isn't it?
It does cause an erosion issue, but not only have they denied access to this barrow where there isn't an erosion issue, incidentally, they've put a big meshing around. Now, when you put a meshing around earth energies, for example, it acts like a Faraday cage, and it's like encasing it, energetically speaking.
Right, so they're cutting the energy out then?
Yes, they're blocking it. That's correct. And another place I noticed this was at the Serapeum near Saqqara in ancient Egypt, where they were putting these massive coffins like for giants, and some people say they're for high technology, other people say they were for the Nephilim. Theories abound, but some of these so-called granite coffins weigh up to 100 tons, and now they're being put in Faraday cages. So what's going on there? Energy being blocked, and this is just the time when we need that earth energy in times of crisis like we're being purported to live in today.
Also, some of us can feel it. Maybe other people can't feel it, but you feel it, don't you?
Yes, I can feel it, and I can douse it with a dowsing rod as well. We can find out the power places by using a dowsing rod. But the energy is so strong, you can feel it within your hands. It's like sometimes it's a tingle, it going hot or it going cold. So there's many different ways to interact with earth energy.
There, we have a very nice driver. Say hello, Beastie. It's Beastie.
We're calling Beastie.
Oh, was it?
Busty.
Busty,
Oh,
sorry.
I like Beastie,
Busty.
actually.
Sorry, I remember that now, Busty. So Busty's driving us. Thank you very much, Busty. And with Maria, I first came across Maria on a video when she's actually dousing the stones at Silbury Hill, and there was all these different levels in them, and I was like, what? I found that really strange because you just think a stone is a stone. And yeah, it was an Australian guy. You remember that then, Maria?
That's right, he's quite a famous Australian guy. He's like the David Icke.
Yeah, you were saying, Maria, about this Australian guy?
Yeah, I was taking him around Avebury, and one thing that I discovered many years ago with electromagnetic sensing equipment used by Rodney Hale, who's helped out numerous earth energy authors, such as myself, and what I wanted to do was douse these energy bands. There's 5 above ground and 2 below. They're like chakras in stone terms, and they give off different electromagnetic frequencies at particular points.
Yeah,
in
that's
stone.
what I saw in your video.
That's right, and that's using the electromagnetic sensing equipment. We got the different frequencies of those energies, so it's undeniable. You've got the equipment. Stones give off electromagnetic energy, and they beam it from one stone to another, to another, to another, to another. So that is Wi-Fi. No wires there, but they're communicating on an electromagnetic level. It is truly an amazing thing to experience at places like Avebury and Stonehenge. But we're going to have to park up now because we're
here.
right on the edge of the Salisbury
No
Plain.
flags up.
No flags. So
Good day to come then,
it's a
Maria.
good day to come. That's out of bounds there. That's military presence over there. But we're going to be walking to the largest long barrow in northwest Europe that housed an elongated queen or high priestess.
Ooh. Thank you very much. Yay, looking forward to it.
Yep, we're here. We're on top of a huge long mound, the longest in northwest Europe. It's 390 feet long, and these are the ditches each side. And those wooden posts that you see have been designed so that the tanks can no longer go over the top of this barrow, because that's what they used to do. They used to use it as tank practice, and now that's all military.
Wow.
They're the tank lanes there for the military, and people have seen UFO activity here. They've seen lights come out of the barrow here, but we've just noticed what I did last week, that fence now says no entry, and they put all of this wiring down.
Oh, I see. Yes, look.
Which acts like a Faraday cage in terms of earth energy.
So this thing must have been breaking up then. Do you think that's where they've done it?
No, it wasn't breaking up. It had been restored.
Yeah, look, it's everywhere. Look, I didn't realise. It's all over the...
Here, you can't see it because it's overgrown. You're walking on top of the wire mesh, and it kind of raises up here.
Oh my God, it's really long. Whoa, biggest in Europe. Wouldn't you like a big hole to appear so you could jump in?
When we get to roughly about here, this is where the elongated skulls
Oh, they're pretty.
placed. It is pretty. That's beautiful flowers.
Yeah.
And it was about sort of here where she would have originally been interned, and this mound is in her honour. So it's very unusual just to have one burial in this long barrow, and there's more barrows. You can't see them because of the tree line, but more elongated men this time were placed in the barrows over there.
So what you're saying is, what you said to me in the car was that the military have taken over all these areas.
That's correct. The military, I mean, you only have to look now. That's all no-go area of military. And all over here, heading in that direction, that's all no-go military. You just have one road that you can access through there, and they can turn this off at any time so it becomes no-go for civilians. And all of these kind of signs down there will tell you no entry, no entry, no entry.
Right. Yeah, not very nice walking on the... Do you think that's all over it, or do you think that's on just on the path?
Look, because I pulled that
Oh
off
yes,
last week.
look. It's over there. Oh,
Yeah, I
God.
pulled it off in places to see how far it goes down, and in effect it goes, look, it goes down much longer,
Yes.
all the way to the bottom of the mound.
So around this, so this is a gully. This is a gully going the ditch, and that's a ditch down there.
And that's where they got the material to build this. Originally, this would have been gleaming chalk white amid a lush green landscape, a bit like finishing off of the pyramids in limestone. So it would have been beautiful, absolutely stunning. But what they've done here is absolutely
Weird. Amazing that we can walk on top of it. And you're right, it's much bigger than the Kennet and Avon one.
Yeah, it's much bigger than West Kent Long Barrow.
Do you know what? It's really peaceful here.
It is. You've got harebells. They're quite rare.
What, those white flowers?
No, this is called a harebell. It's very delicate and it's quite a rare form of flower.
Right.
So it attracts lots.
What it is we're actually on top of the Long Barrow. This is the Long Barrow. Maria, you were showing me a book at your house. I was quite surprised that all the stars line up with Silbury, Avebury and all that. Just in a couple of minutes. You explain that. I might have to go back to your house and take a picture of it, put it in.
Yeah, I'll send you some JPEGs. That's right, there's a huge long lay that connects Avebury, Stonehenge, Silbury, the most significant monuments in Wessex, and they're on a ley line that equates to the planets above.
Yeah.
So, for example, you've got Marden, it's a superhenge in between Avebury and Stonehenge. Little is survived of it today. Den is an Old English word for settlement. Mar, the settlement of Mars, Mardenhenge.
Right.
Then I got an astronomer friend of mine to say, how were the ancients calculating this? And he discovered that it's the mean distance of using Silbury for Earth, calculating where every single one of those planets are in the heavens above. Using the same system as the ancients did, I could find Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
And what did you tell me? They were far more advanced than we were.
Absolutely, we've gone backwards. We haven't gone forwards. I mean, you tell me, anyone that doesn't have a computer, how would you know that? How would you know the mean distance of Earth to Mercury?
But people like you are now telling us the truth.
Well, yes, I think it's all repressed, because if we also go to 2745 BC, the so-called heyday of Stonehenge and Avebury fame, then all of those planets lined up in the heavens, mirroring the planets on the line below. So that was their activation day, or if their monuments are much older, then it was a reactivation day. But they knew when that planetary alignment...
Yeah, you were saying, Maria, about her being murdered?
Yeah, I was explaining earlier that the Neolithic queen, who probably had something to do with the construction of Stonehenge because she's unprecedented burial, unfortunately, there must have been some kind of disagreement with another race. They had more rounded skulls, and she was murdered. And then I looked at all of the other barrows surrounding this massive, massive long barrow structure, and they too had been murdered. In fact, one barrow way over there in the heart of the military land, which is definitely a no-go area at all times, there was a huge mound that had just males in them, and all of the males had been killed. So Stonehenge was their spiritual capital, and I think they fought for it. And I am sure that the long-skulled, the elongated race people, they built Stonehenge, and they also built these massive long barrows.
Well, no one would understand that this was a long barrow. They'd think it was something to do with the military, wouldn't you? It's just a mound to a lot of people.
That's right. So it's a bit, you have to know what you're looking for in terms of ancient monuments.
So how old do you think this mound is?
This mound, Orthodox dating, is 3,800 round skulls, and they started to build rounder stone circle monuments. And
which ones are those then?
well, you see Avebury's in different phases. It has a Neolithic phase and has a Bronze Age phase, which are 500 years apart. So Avebury wasn't just one design, it was different cultures changing the monument. So, for example, pre-2500 BC, you'd have just long barrows in the British Isles, but when the beaker culture came here with the round skulls, they started to build round barrows, and there's no long skull people in this area found in the round barrows, only round skull people. So we've got round barrows, round skulls, long mounds, long skulls.
Great. I'm glad that you're telling us this. But honestly, this is enormous. Do you think that the Kennet and Avon barrow looked a bit more like this?
Oh, it would have done, because that was restored in the 1950s by Stuart Piggott and Professor Richard Atkinson. And so they made it that the West Kennet Longbarrow also had megalithic chambers. This had timber chambers. So it was a different style.
How did you find all this stuff out about it then?
Well, it's looking into the archaeological model. It's looking to who has written about it in times like 1666 by antiquarians like John Aubrey. Then in the 1720s, the Reverend William Stukely recorded a lot about the monuments here. So we
Wow.
piece together, like a sleuth, what's going on in the history timeline.
Right. Well done, Maria.
Yeah, no, it's...
This is Maria's find.
Yep, so, yeah, that's right. I mean, I discovered that the Stonehenge people had long skulls, and that's repressed. And we need to emphasize that we are not being fed the truth half of the, well, most of the time.
No.
And that there is a lot going on that needs to be rediscovered.
Yeah. By people like you.
Yeah, so we're now on top of the barrow again, and we
Yeah.
can see a really good view. On a clear day, you could see for miles on this barrow, but it's such a dark day that...
It's okay, I feel really good up here though.
It is, it's nice.
Maybe when we go down there, we'll just see if we can just see the barrow a little bit from a distance to show people it is a barrow. Because to them, we're just on, and you know, they can't see it's a barrow, can they? Oh, golly. Now I'm going through all the, do excuse me, all the thorns. Whew. But you can see that people have walked on here because there's a footpath across the top. These people wouldn't have known what they were walking on.
Like we said earlier, these are the huge deep ditches, so they would have been like a big V. It would have been looked very contemporary, this barrow. And without the trees, and we now know that there wasn't that many trees on the Salisbury Plain.
Oh yeah, it's really weird. The trees are at the end of the barrow, and they're at the end of the barrow.
Same as at Avebury, to try and disguise it. And you see that more in the Avebury environs. So yeah, this is about sort of 390 feet long.
How many feet?
390 feet long, and it originally was up to probably much higher, because, you know, it's been slipped. It's called erosion, and it's had erosion slippage, so it would have been higher 5,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also, Brian, Maria told me, I didn't know this, that military bases are always stuck these specific sites. They're not to protect us, they're to keep us from knowing the truth. There's always army bases around Stonehenge, around these long barrows. Is that what it's like abroad when you go? Is there a big military base right next to the pyramids? Do you find that quite alarming though, that all these army barracks are there?
Well, it's a nuisance more than anything else, and yeah, there are lots of military bases around the Giza area, and there's an ancient site called what's it called? Zayat El Arian, which is an ancient pyramid with a subterranean complex, which is surrounded by a military base. Nobody's been allowed non-military in there for 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realise that. Maria told me that.
And also what we noticed about the long barrow, it was completely in wire mesh as well. So what the military have done to
Yeah, and
that
of course
long
the
barrow...
Dashur.
Oh, I see. We've got a tiny weeny bit of delay here. That's a tiny. We've just got a bit of delay. Sorry, Maria, finish what you were saying, and then Brian can answer.
I was just saying what the military have done as well on the long barrow, and bear in mind this is a sacred site and sacred place, as well as an archaeological sensitive site. They've completely enmeshed it in wire, all the way down the length, all the way down the side, like some kind of strange Faraday cage.
Which makes it a Faraday cage, doesn't it? That's what you were saying.
Well, I like a Faraday cage for sure.
So what do you think they did? So they just don't want any of the energy coming out, basically.
Well, I mean, they are saying it's for erosion purposes, but there was no erosion slippage on that barrow, and hundreds of people stand on the West Kennet long barrow, and there is still no erosion slippage. A handful of people rather stand on that long barrow, and suddenly there's erosion slippage. I don't believe it was for erosion purposes.
You told me that they drove the tanks over it.
Originally, yes, they did. Not just over that long barrow on the Salisbury Plain, but on other barrows on the Salisbury Plain as well.
And also, they've actually covered them up because they've put tanks there, which would have gone over them, and people would have just thought, "Oh, look, that's where they drive the tanks over," not realising that they're long barrows. Anyway, we had a good day that way, and it was really strange that there was trees at the end of it, at both ends of it, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's what the Victorians used to do, to cover up pagan sites, whether it was round barrows, long barrows, the entrance to Avebury, the exit to Avebury. They planted trees, normally beech trees, to disguise the monument. So it was a deliberate planning by the late Victorians.
When we were on top there, you said
Wow.
that there was loads of barrows around, didn't you?
9 long barrows, surviving long barrows in the Stonehenge environs alone. And there's over 2,000 in Wiltshire.
Wow. Yes, you two are uncovering
Wow.
all the elongated headed people, aren't you?
Yes, that's right. Obviously, Brian is well known for his work in Marcus and in other worldwide.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Maria. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Known for his research into the Paracas, and other ancient sites worldwide.
What, the elongated headed people were white, you mean?
No, I didn't say they were white. I said Brian's investigated them.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Just misheard that. Yeah, he's done masses of work on it, haven't you, Brian? You've been putting a load of pictures out lately, haven't you, on YouTube?
Well, I can't really go anywhere, so I've been having to make videos and post pictures and things like that. Logical, pre-med kind of background. I just thought that's very odd, you know, the shape and complexity of them. And so I looked through the academic papers and there was almost nothing written about them, which I found very strange. So I just took it upon myself to explore the phenomenon.
Yeah, last year, or maybe the year before now, you put out, didn't you? Obviously, these elongated headed people are subhuman.
They're probably a subspecies.
Did we, Maria, you said that we actually probably married them and were with them, but then somehow maybe we killed them off?
No, I think, you know, in England, which is a bit different situation to Caracas and Peru, it seems that they could, in the north of England, you must realise that in the south of England, you have major ancient sites like Stonehenge and Avebury. And if you go further north to places like Derbyshire, you have other large sites like Arborough, which is called the Stonehenge of the North, for example. And in the evidence for the mixing of the long-skulled people with the beaker culture, which had round skulls that came to the British shores in 2500 BC, for example, probably intermarried there, and there was no violence against one another because they were living side by side and they were being buried side by side. So the further north that you go in the British Isles, there's a different story to the southern story, which is that there was a lot of evidence in southern England, especially around Stonehenge, that there had been some conflicts because a lot of the long-skulled people were found with head wounds in the Long Barrows by antiquarians and by later archaeologists as well. So there's kind of different chapters, different stories wherever you go, and same similar in France actually. So I think we need to look at each place and each region with its own merit. And just like London is different today to where I live, which is a 12th century market town not far from Avebury, there's a different subculture going on. So I think it was like that in the Neolithic and the Chalcolithic, the Copper Age, because it was that Copper Age around about 2480 BC, where you get all of these transitions and the beaker culture coming over.
So the elongated headed people were here first then?
In the Neolithic period in the British Isles, yes.
Is that what you find the same, Brian? It's the same, you have the same answer as Maria?
Well, Maria's been my teacher about the phenomenon in England, so I defer to her expertise about the time periods there. But again, it was very curious to be able to go inside the Stonehenge complex with her. Thanks to her influence, we were allowed to go right inside and be within like half an inch of the stones, making sure we didn't touch them because we would get told off if we did that. But just the story she told me of the age of the complex and dependent radiocarbon studies that have been done shed a lot of light on the true age of Stonehenge. Again, the magic figure we keep being told is 2500 BC for everything, and she had, thanks to another researcher, radiocarbon evidence that Stonehenge is at least 10,000 years old, and it was two perfect circles, which when you're there and you look at it, you see that makes complete logical sense, because when it was reconstructed, they obviously had no plan as to what it originally looked like. So that was a very illuminating experience.
Yeah.
Was there two circles at Avebury as well, Maria?
There was three at Avebury, and they're just finding now with what's called LiDAR and various other means like geophys, that you had a very large outer circle at Avebury, two inner circles, but now it's known that you also had linear lines linking certain parts of the monument. And like I said to Brian, and I'm sure Brian is very well aware with his research in Egypt and far, far beyond, that it is a spoon-fed date, 2500 BC. That's the archaeological model. And it does seem that Avebury could, and Stonehenge and other sites, especially in the north of England and Ireland and France, could really, really predate that anyway to at least 10,000 BC. And what's been recently found around Stonehenge is a huge area of very deep pits. So if you imagine you've got a place called Durrington Wall, which was a superhenge. It was far, far bigger than Avebury. And Durrington Walls was where the people originally lived when they built Stonehenge. And you have now a much older causewayed enclosure built by the long-skulled people, predating that by 1,000 years. And using Lark Hill, if you drew a huge circle with around that area, then you have these pit monuments that have just recently been found. And some of the pit monuments are 65 feet wide by 16 feet deep. I mean, these were huge structures. What were the ancients up to there is something that is being explored by archaeologists and alternative researchers alike.
You told me that in the Silbury complex there, well, by Avebury, that there was more pyramids there originally, didn't you, Maria?
There were three major mounds Within a few miles of one another, there was what's called the Hatfield Barrow, which was another superhenge called Mardenhenge, which is in the middle of Avebury and Stonehenge, very significantly placed right in the esoteric centre of those two huge henges anyway. So Mardenhenge was massive. It was really huge. It had sweat lodges, stone circles. It was a bustling place in the Neolithic and the Bronze Ages. And that too had a very large mound. And in my hometown, you have what's called Merlin's Mount, which is a Neolithic mound, just like Silbury. Yes, so there was 3 major mounds.
I found out that, you know, all the big schools, I mean, obviously it's Marlborough College, but Eton and Harrow and all these, they've got mounds in as well.
That's right. A lot of that research was done by a lady called...
Okay, well, the theory is that there was a series of cataclysms that happened during the Younger Dryas period, which was around 13,000 to 12,000 years ago, and that these megalithic sites would have been created before that time period because obviously they don't fit the timeline of standard archaeology of the 2500 BC thing. We have no evidence of any cultures we know of that were capable of doing that kind of work more recently. So these would be pre-cataclysmic cultures that would have created these megalithic locations in Peru and Bolivia and Egypt and possibly Stonehenge and who knows, Karnak and Petra in Jordan, Baalbek in Lebanon, Egypt, etc. And the other interesting thing is that the most sacred sites that we know of are lined almost exactly to north, south, east, and west. But in locations, especially in Egypt, we find that quite a few of the megalithic ones are 23.5 degrees off of north, south, east, and west, which would suggest that the axis of the Earth had changed over the course of time, probably during this cataclysm period, and that's backed up by many other researchers who are looking at this stuff now in terms of alignments.
These buildings are. Is it frustrating, or you don't look at it that way?
Well, I used to look at it that way. I'd get very frustrated about a lot of different things, but now all you have to do is you simply have to present what you find to the general public. You know, you don't go through the academic thing, through peer review or anything like that. Those are all worn out institutions. There's been way too much control of information for hundreds of years about who's allowed to learn this stuff. So when somebody opens the door and allows me to go through, I simply do that, hopefully with a camera in my hand.
What does that mean then if they want to completely shut off our history so that we can't find out what's happened properly? What do you make of that then?
Well, they're losing their capability to do that because every cell phone has a high definition camera in it. So you get a lot of people who are able to record things that are supposedly prohibited or whatever. And in a country like Egypt, you know, they say it's illegal to do this, it's illegal to do that, but it depends upon who you know and how much influence they have. And if they're able to open a door for you, then you simply do that. You go through the door, you record what you have. For Egypt, you don't post anything while you're in the country because you can get into trouble, but that's why I just have a tendency of recording a lot of stuff when I'm there, and then when I get back to Peru, that's when I start making the videos, because there's no way they're going to be able to, if anyone wanted to, they'd have no ability to track me down.
That's quite amazing in itself. So when you're in Egypt, you can't put videos up, but you can when you leave the country. Amazing.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been warned about by people like Patricia and also our new guide, Mohammed, again, who's a PhD candidate. He said the Egyptian authorities know who you are, Brian, and one little bad misstep and you can be destroyed by them. So that's what made me wake up to what's going on, and you know, it's kind of mildly scary to know that the authorities know who you are and what your Facebook is and all this kind of thing, but they can't, you know, once you leave the country, there's not anything they can really do, and we have to push against the standard academic story anyway, because none of us want to be lied to anymore, and that's what the population is waking up to.
Yes, there's many a video I myself over the years had watched about how they built the pyramids, and when you get to the end after watching all those videos, it never happened like that in the first place.
Well,
On the megalithic sites in Peru, you know, somebody recently asked me, is there any evidence of like sleeping areas or bathrooms? And it's like, no. So that makes those locations very curious.
Wow. Is there anywhere that you would like to go that you haven't been, Brian?
I'd like to go to India at some point.
And what's there that you want to see there then?
Oh, some of the biggest megalithic stuff in the world is in India.
Right. That we don't really know about, you mean?
Well, again, you're just getting a standard timeline of, you know, whatever, the Hindus built this 1,000 years ago or something, and it's like they didn't have the capability of it. We're talking huge chambers carved into the bedrock that go in hundreds of feet. It's like it's just not possible.
No, what about the one in Jordan? You know, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's got the big front on it, but it's all in stone, and they were managing to carve out these pillars in the stone, and then there's great big rooms in there, isn't there? All like marble and stuff like that. What's your take on that then?
Oh, you mean Petra?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Petra's monumental. It's actually 12 kilometers long. Most people just see what's called the Treasury, which was in Indiana Jones, and they think that's Petra. And it's like, no, you have to walk through this almost like cavern thing called the Seek for a mile to get to the Treasury. And we had a local guide with us, and I said, how far does Petra go? And he said, 12 kilometers. So we walked all the way to the end. We didn't wind up seeing all of it, but you see these chamber after chamber, thousands of chambers. One of them we measured to be 300,000 cubic feet in size.
Do you have any idea what you think they were for then? They can't be just storage, can they?
No, that's, you know, again, it's a very puzzling place, but there's definite evidence of machining technology, because we see the tool marks on the ceilings and the walls. And it had to have been very advanced machining, not somebody with a bunch of chisels.
No, I think that's a hard thing for us all to grasp, isn't it? That these civilizations were probably a lot more advanced than we are now, rather.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same, Maria? Do you feel it's like Brian says?
Well, yes, I think we're just scratching the surface, really, to uncover what the ancient civilizations, who they were, why they were building these things, the fundamental questions that, you know, need to be addressed, and that's what really keeps me going, is to solve the mystery of it all. So I do look at the ancient sites, you know, across the world, and try to understand about the people that built them, and try to get burial practice in that area was placing a skeleton in what's called the flexed position. That's tying the body to look like it's in the fetal position. That was very common at Stonehenge. Elsewhere, like Avebury-Henge has a very famous Neolithic monument called the West Kennet Long Barrow. Then you would have perhaps a whole body placed in there in the flexed position, but more normally the skull and the long bones. And that wasn't the case in this burial. And on the inside of these people holding each other was the unusual description of the skull, full body and with quite a tail as well, which is very unusual. But it seemed that they were revering this person in the middle to have been placed right in the center of a long barrow. Normally in a long barrow burial, it's at one end of the wider opening, if you will, of a long barrel. That's where you normally get the burial funds.
Brian?
Yeah, that's intriguing. And like what Maria says, no matter how many times you go to an ancient place or area, there's always something else to be discovered, whether it's recent excavations or local contacts you meet up with. That's why the places I visit never become dull, because you can never get the full picture. You have to keep going back over and over again, and that's why it'll be nice to go to Egypt in October for my 9th trip, and then in March next year for the 10th one. There's always more, and by March of next year, the Grand Egyptian Museum at the Giza Plateau should be open, so that'll be one of the preeminent museums in the world, the largest single one building museum in the world is that one, which they're finally finishing off now, so that'll be very exciting to see.
And almost see something else. And that's what I really do like about the ancient landscape. Each time that you go there, there's something else that calls you or grabs your attention in a little bit of a different way than previously visited.
Can I just ask you, Brian, when Maria said that this body might have had a tail on it, what does that say to you then?
Gee, I don't know. That's very kind of odd, but the Star Child skull supposedly has at least 25 different characteristics that make it non-Homo sapiens sapiens, and we found 3 other small skulls in Peru that are very similar looking to the Star Child one. So it's another example of ancient mysteries that are surfacing, which we like to expose people to, even if the academics aren't particularly interested in the subject. The audience we're trying to reach is the planetary whole, the general public, and not necessarily academia, because they're so, in general, closed-minded or try to cover up things. But also, of course, with the internet, stuff is opening up more and more as time goes on, with the use of cell phones and that kind of thing. It's still very exciting times, and now that this 1.5 year problem we've all been experiencing is starting to dissipate, then it opens up the possibility to do all sorts of other things as time goes on.
I think people are starting to realise as well that a lot of what we want to know is down there. We need to dig down.
Or hidden away in museums or in warehouses, and that's the exciting thing about the new museum.
It was a warehouse style system where you had, no joking, sort of about 10 rows, and it was going on for some distance. There must have been hundreds and hundreds of skulls there, and one side was Abydos and the other side was Stonehenge. I was looking at all of the labels on the boxes, and it just had the symbol male or female, and they were numerous skulls there. So Cambridge has an awful lot in its collection. And just to quickly go back to the strange burial deposit at Stonehenge, I got in touch with Dr. Ted Robinson, because he worked on the initial case with Lloyd Pye with the Star Child, and he has many credentials, because you can. I was discussing with him what would cause a tail, which we mentioned earlier, because there were signs from the West Kennet long barrow of spina bifida, for example. There was some people that had suffered from that had been interned in that barrow. But going by what I showed him, what was said in a report, he said he would rule that out. And he said even though that his father, because his father was a doctor, as well as him, was present at one unusual birth of a human, obviously, which had a tail and had a lot of hair, almost fur-like, didn't live that long. So he said rule out spina bifida and rule out hydrocephalic conditions that can cause a skull to bloat. So it is strange that out of all of the and I've read incidentally all of the archaeological reports of all of the burial deposits in Stonehenge and the Avebury environs. I've read them all. And what's different between Stonehenge and Avebury, for example, is Stonehenge is the largest Bronze Age and Neolithic cemetery in Northwest Europe, compared to other areas in Europe and Avebury. So, like I said, it's when something becomes so unusual, that's when I think something stands out to me.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it was quite amazing, Marie. I don't know what it means. These were all elongated-headed people that you were talking about with skeleton.
Yeah, that surrounded the one unusual skull that was described as being small. So it was the three normal-sized, long-skulled people, which were actually quite short anyway. The femur bones were found, and the women were about 4'9", and the males were no larger than 5'4". And it's very interesting that coming out of Oxford, only recently released actually, was the latest DNA findings from comparing what's called the Belgica culture. They were coming to England round about the Chalcolithic period, the Copper Age of 2480 BC, for example. And they were comparing all of that DNA to the ancient Britons, and they now know that they're much taller. I mean, they were much taller, the Belgica culture, to the indigenous ancient Britons. And they now are categorically saying that the people in the round barrows, the taller Belgica, did not build Stonehenge. They had no ancestral claim to the landscape. So we're now saying that the ancient Britons built Stonehenge, which are the long-headed people, compared to the much more newcomers, if you will, which migrated across Europe, mainly from the Netherlands, as the latest DNA finds.
Can I ask something? And obviously Brian is really into elongated-headed people. Did you find the ones in England about the same time, or were you? How did you Because in a sense, you two have got such common things, haven't you? You're both into elongated-headed people, and we've got them here. So, what you just started finding them like Brian was finding them, then, Maria?
They are different. I mean, as Brian will describe, I'm sure in a moment to the audience, the Neolithic ancient British long-skulled people had sort of like longer skulls, not so dramatic as the finds in Paracas, for example, which are kind of more cone-headed. They were longer at the back, so to speak. And they were quite thick-skulled. The bone was quite thick that had been discovered. That's what makes the other find at Stonehenge quite unique, because it was more thinner than the more used to be in the thick long-skulled people.
Brian, when you were looking at your skulls, do you think that would you ever have thought that they would have been all over England as well?
No, that was actually a find of Maria's. Of course, there have been elongated skulls found in different parts of Europe, especially in Germany and Austria and Bulgaria and Romania and Turkey and other locations that seem to have their ancestry going back to the Black Sea area. But no, Maria's discovery of that was the first I'd ever heard of the idea that there were elongated skull people who lived in England. And of course, when I was able to spend time with Maria at Stonehenge, she dropped a lot of truth bombs about the actual history of the site, which made a lot of sense, much more sense to me than the standard academic rhetoric of 4,500 years old, and made by the Druids and all that kind of thing. So that was a very insightful trip. I'm still very appreciative for the fact that she was allowed to get us access into the inner circle area of Stonehenge, which was very, very rare for people to be allowed to do that. The first time I went to Stonehenge when I was 16, there wasn't even a fence around it. And the way that it's been controlled over time, they had so many, not military people, but so many guards there that were making sure you didn't touch anything, and and all the lichen that was growing on the stone, which didn't make any sense in terms of its vibratory properties and all that kind of thing. That is a very, very, very eye-opening trip.
Did you
Yes.
Did you take him to Silbury Hill as well, Maria?
Yes, we did the Avebury environs, and we went around Avebury as well as Stonehenge, and I took Brian in through the what's called Lark Hill military section, just to give. That's what the normal tourists do not see. They don't see the kind of military side entrance. They go through what's called the A303 and don't see any of that. So they don't associate the huge military presence that is on the Salisbury Plain. And the Salisbury Plain contains 2,000 Neolithic and Bronze Age monuments alone in a 25 by 25 mile area. Which you have such limited access to. I mean, sometimes you can visit it, but on the most you can't.
Yeah, Maria took me to one of the long barrows, didn't you, Maria?
Yes, we went to the huge long barrow that's in Tillshead.
And it's got this horrible meshing around it, hasn't it?
They did put wire meshing around that particular long barrow. You wouldn't get that on a tourist site like West Kennet because it doesn't look very aesthetic when you put wire all around a long barrow.
Did you like Silbury Hill, Brian?
What's that?
Did you like Silbury Hill?
Oh yeah. I had been there before, but not with someone who was an expert like Maria. So that was, again, a very fascinating story, much more complicated than what the general public get to see. And also West Kennet was, again, I'd been there, but it was much more fascinating to go with Maria because of her local knowledge and expertise. So it brought a lot more information than I expected. So that was great.
And also, there's quite a lot together, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's amazing how complex just the Salisbury Plain is, and all of the recent discoveries that are being made. And obviously there are areas like Maria showed us, which is under heavy military control. They're still bombing certain locations and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, they're worse in this country than they are in Egypt, aren't they?
Well, England, of course, is smaller, but Egypt, of course, has a lot of stuff that's still hidden away from the public, where you're
Of the academics that I know, mainly at Oxford. But I have a good contact in Oxford, actually, that I've studied under for 3 years. They just don't accept that they were the ancient Britons. And what I've got recently, because prior to lockdown, the lockdown was looming, so I didn't get to finish my final year that I paid for, actually. We had to then go online. It's not the same, so I gave the opportunity, because I knew it was looming, to just download as much as I could from libraries and get access to different sources, which I went through, in lockdown. So now I have all of the dimensions of all of the body size. Before I just had the skull size. And in going through the kind of measurements, which these were anthropologists that did these measurements that, Oxford catalogued, then the appearance of the elongated skulled people is definitely not how we are in proportion to our bodies. It's completely different. When I presented that to my then tutor, it was, well, where did you get these measurements from? Well, from you, from the organisation, the institute. And still they were saying, well, we'll go through them, we'll have a look, but then nothing is said, nothing is acknowledged. So I think it's up to independent researchers to really say this is the facts of the matter, not somebody making something up, which the New Age often does. But these are the facts. This is what the anthropologists have left behind. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to show the ancient Britons who built Stonehenge, and their body proportions were completely different to our own. They look different. They probably really had different sensory perceptions of places like Stonehenge as well. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
I've got this bit about Indians at the moment. When I look nearly everyone up, most of them have feathers, but they all pretty well look like Indians. Do you know where all these people come from? No, it's just because they all look the same. When you look at them, they all look Indian. I mean, this one is Korean. These are Korean, but these are like Native Americans. Anyway, without ado, we're going to play the video of this collection of pictures to show you that they're all Indians. And also my friend Richard made the music, and I'm adding another one of his songs, so that's perfect. behold, I went to go and whatever it was on Google, probably spell a word or something, or look a word up, make sure I spelt it right. And on the home page, Chile's ancient mummies are thousands of years older than the Egyptian. They're strange looking things, and they're not particularly big people at all. But I thought that was very interesting. After doing all the Indian stuff, we come across even more mummies now. There's a little bit of information there which you'd like to stop. They say that they are from 7,000 years ago. Wow. They do have... I knew it when I saw them. I knew it when I saw this woman, which we're going to come across in a moment. I mean, there's not so much left of these ones, and they do have masks on, and they are put in clay. It's almost like they've just lost his hands and his feet. It's a bit weird, that. But they're supposed to be old, but they've got like material around them, so that lasted, but their hands and feet don't seem to be there. That was The Guardian. I'll put that out today. And then, of course, there are those statues in the desert. And it was her head. Do you see that? Look at her head. You know, it would not be like this. I thought, she's got an elongated head, just like the others. So we're just looking at some pictures of them, and then we're going to come across it, because I did find a tiny bit of information. But at least someone reported it, I suppose. Do you see what I mean? Where's their feet and hands? And they look like got straw in them or something. Look how small that is. Is it just me, or does that look quite small? I don't know, I don't really understand these mummies, but they're supposed to be thousands of years old, so again they look futuristic almost, don't they? Like they've come out of a film, the masks. Crazy. Even him, I thought his hair, he's got to have a... Look at that one, they've got bigger heads. Anyway, we'll see that in a moment when I see the information. I'm quite happy that I found that though, because tick another lot. I'm not sure if I did Chile in my Indian ones, but obviously most of South America seems to be Indian, so, or derived from Indian. See, that one had stuff around it, all that lasted, but their hands and feet don't last. That's really weird. And then they say, go, head bounding, and it's teardrop shape, just up there. Let's have a look, stop that, just here. Oh, those are the Peruvians with teardrop shaped. Because you put in something, you never, you know, sometimes you don't get what you want, do you? But anyway, there's the Peruvian ones. But obviously we're looking at the ones from Chile. And look what it says there. Most common mummification were the black mummies and the red mummies. What types of mummies were there? So I'm just looking up a few things about them. There you go, 7,000 years ago. Anyway, look it all up yourself. Some of the mummies are starting to decompose, but it's probably because they've moved them and everything. They were fine where they were. There are. I did find a bit which we're going to see in a minute. So there you go. It doesn't really, some of these things never really answer your question, not really. It gives you a question rather than answers the question. That's a politician, isn't it? Anyway, we're moving on. There, that one there, I think she's, well, that one of the little girls has this, well, she was tiny, she was only 6 inches big, so it must have been a miscarry. Oh, there you go. And it's strange because a lot of the Chileans derive from Spain. They've got Spanish descent. Can you believe that? Like, what? Spanish descent. And here we're just looking, there's just like so many questions. So there's just saying it was the Alcon kings who had the elongated heads. The Incas had them, the Mayans had them, and then there you go, it's just looking up a few questions. There you go. Now that is one of the mummies. It's a little mummified. It's only 6 inches big. Tiny little thing. It's got quite a long neck, hasn't it? A little bit of information there if you want to stop and read it. But what it was is I was thinking, wow, where am I going to find that in there? There was just a sentence, which we'll go back to in a second, but I was just showing you if you want to stop and read it, just stop and read it. But when you go back to where I saw it here, there you go. It's from The Guardian. It says that this one had an elongated cone shape. So I knew it. I knew they did because I could see it in the pictures with the woman. But there you go. So they also had elongated heads as well. And in here they're saying that all the people were bound. But why would you do such a horrible thing? Because it's, well, I want to be fashionable. I'm going to bind my head. It just, with all the things that happened or built and what they did, it just seems a really strange thing to do. You know, and Brian Forrester reckon that they are different people. And they're quite small anyway. Anyway, what's your thoughts then? That these mummies are much older than the Egyptians. They look a little bit strange, but what's your thoughts on that? I suppose you would be if you were 7,000 years dead, but anyway, what's your thoughts on this video?